Welcome to the Manhood Neat podcast. Well, D-Watt, we've hit February, and we already have more podcasts in for the year than all of last year combined.
2024 is a win.
It's a win. It's already a win. So I'm excited about that. Hey, guys, just want to say thanks for listening. If you'd like to support the podcast, the best way to do that is just to like and subscribe, share on social media with your friends. If you do want to reach out and give us a bourbon suggestion, want to send us a bottle, hey, we're always game for that too. Or you just got questions, comments, concerns, just reach out at manhood.neat@gmail.com, manhood.neat@gmail.com. And again, somebody will get back to you on that. So, D-Watt, what's been going on the last couple of weeks, man?
Man, it's been busy. I was out of town last week for a conference in Atlanta, and then come back Monday. Full speed ahead. We have a big event coming up at my job, kind of toward the end of the month, and so I've just been preparing for that, trying to make sure that all my ducks are in a row when it comes to the public safety side of things. So it's been good. What about you?
So we were dry this week, so we've been wide open, trying to get stuff planted, get some fields prepped. And of course, what happens when you take weeks off and then you try to push real hard is everything falls apart. So that's pretty much our week's been going. There's been machine breakdown and stuff, but we're moving. The plant and crew we got work for us was the guy that runs it, his wife was in the disc until 4 o'clock in the morning, just pushing acres out. So
wow,
they're getting it done. And then she has to turn around and prep meals and stuff for the team. So trooper. But
I thought you were going to tell me she had to go teach school or something.
No. Our planting group's actually out of Pennsylvania, so they're just remote living down here for a while. But no, it's been good. It's been busy. But yeah, it's just been doing that and then trying to do the home life thing on top of how it gets to get busy. So But it's been good. So I guess we do have a bottle sitting next to us, or we each have a bottle sitting next to us.
Yeah.
What do we got tonight?
We have Wild Turkey Rare Breed Rye.
Oh.
Yeah, very fancy. I'm excited about this. So Wild Turkey, for a long time, didn't do a rye. They, and one of their master distillers, Jimmy Russell, is famously quoted saying that he doesn't like fooling with rye. I guess after doing some reading that when you distill rye, it gets very gummy. And when you have to clean out all of the machines and stuff, everybody hates it because it's so much more work than just regular corn or I guess some of the other grains. So a lot of people don't like fooling with rye, but we know that rye traditionally kind of carried was the whiskey through the West, right? Because rye was cheap. When they came over, they needed something to distill. Rye was grown. It was grown easy. It was planted. And so rye really dominated through, I guess, until the Prohibition. And then Prohibition, of course, that shut everything down. And then when they tried to fire it back up, they had a hard time. It was a lot of corn, distilled spirits, and rye really went away. So they really didn't boom. I found some sales data, actually, did a little research. Look at me. And it really didn't.
Everything here.
I know, right? It really didn't. Rye really didn't come back until the early 2000s, really, when there was a boom. This rye particularly wasn't distilled not distilled, but wasn't produced and made for purchase for the public until 2020. So Wild Turkey they use a single grain mash bill, not a single grain mash bill, but they use the same mash bill for all their ryes. So whether it's the 101, the single barrel, they have a kind of a allocated, I think it's called Cornerstone, that rye that they did. And so when they released Rare Breed Bourbon, people were pretty jazzed about Barrel Proof Wild Turkey. And then a couple years later, they came across with the rye. It's really good. It's what's considered a Kentucky rye. The mash bill is 51% rye, 37% corn, 12% malted barley. So because it has such a high corn in the mash bill, they call that a Kentucky rye. It tends to be a little sweeter than some of your other stuff. Old Overholt is a company up north, and they do a Pennsylvania rye. And then you have some folks like Whistle Pig, who's 100% rye. So this is really supposed to be pretty good. The alcohol is 56.1%, 8%. So the boys in Knoxville, Jacksonville, Tuscaloosa, and the Iowanians listening, that's going to be 112.2 proof. So kind of a low barrel proof in my opinion, but barrel proof nonetheless. So those are the words.
I guess I got a rye question for you because I've had ryes. I like ryes, but I'm not as familiar with them as whiskey, other whiskeys and bourbons.
Yeah.
Do you see ryes in the high proof like you do bourbons?
You do. They're really, ryes age faster than bourbon does. So a 4 to 6 year old rye is going to be a really mature rye compared to an 8 to 10 year old whiskey. But a lot of it has to do with how it goes in the barrel, the proof that it goes in the barrel. So some of them, I don't think it can be considered a bourbon. It can't go in over 125 proof, but ryes, I think it's different. I don't know if it's as regulated, but you really didn't see barrel proof ryes until recently. It's really kind of become a thing, and I love a rye, especially in the winter. It just, something about it just kind of warms me up. In fact, I don't drink a lot of, I feel kind of bougie saying this, but I don't really drink a whole lot of ryes when it's hot outside, just because there's some nice spice and stuff to them. It's just, when I think rye, I think wintertime. So they're definitely out there. I think I have a couple. I have one from 13th Colony, which is in Americus. I've got one from New Riff that came from the distillery. This is a barrel proof rye that's fantastic. I've got a Jack Daniel's rye, some barrel proof rye that's really good. So yeah, I like a barrel proof rye. So
well, let's pop this top.
Yeah.
Little pour here.
I have my Bubba Glencairn.
Oh, your 18.5 ounce Glencairn.
Yeah.
All right. Oh man, straight to the nose. It's I would say fresh is the first word that comes off. And I know, you don't like the word fresh when it comes to whiskey, but it's not syrupy. I don't get that syrupy smell like I do off a lot of bourbons, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get the nose for me is I would describe it as bright, and I get a lot of like citrus fruits, so lemon, like green apple, that kind of stuff. It's pretty bright to me on the nose a little bit.
Have you had the Charms caramel apple suckers that they actually come dipped in caramel? They're like the greatest sucker ever. So it's like a green apple sucker, and they dip it in a little bit of caramel. Okay. And like when you open the package, like that's the smell I get.
Okay, I can see that. I do get a little bit of the caramel, but not a ton. I get the rye grain pretty forward.
Yeah, I get a lot of green apple. Yeah.
Yeah, and right behind that, right behind the kind of fruity stuff is where the rye hits me, and that for me, rye is like black pepper. It's just kind of got a little spice to it, but the nose is great.
Yeah, I enjoy that. I'm gonna taste it.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers. That lemon hits first.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah,
big time. And then I get the nose is very similar to the palate for me. I get the lemon, and then I get the caramel, like right behind it. But I get a kind of a menthol note. But that's standard that's what I get from rye. So that's not out of the box for me.
So I get like hay.
I could see grass. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's nice. There's like I hate to use the word smooth because it just gets overused, but a lot of times I'll describe it as like spiky, if there's a lot of proof, a lot of ethanol, or if it's very like a rounded flavor. And to me, this is very rounded. Like it's not spiky at all. It's not harsh. Even with it being 112 proof, I don't hardly get the proof on that at all. Yeah. That's really nice. Yeah. I will say that the finish is quick. Like it's not as quick as maybe Evan Williams was, but it definitely isn't as long as Chattanooga. I get a little, and what I really like about it is that it's sweet. It has a very sweet finish for me. So almost like some cinnamon rolls. Like it's good. It's nice.
Yeah. So to me on the finish, to me, I guess it depends on where you want to transition from one to the other, from the palate to the finish. But to me, to me, the finish kind of starts when the pepper hits. Like I get that lemon and that kind of grassy sweetness up front. Then I kind of get some pepper, and then like you said, it fades into maybe not even peppers like that, or like it's more like I don't know what it's called. Have you ever had spiced apple cider?
Yeah,
like that. What's the not?
It's like nutmeg, isn't it?
Is it nutmeg and clove? Is that what's in there?
Yeah,
but it's kind of like that. Like you chewed on it, so you get that real spice hit, and then it kind of mellows out into the sweetness. So
yeah, that's a really good descriptive. The power suggestion is strong because I'm sitting here kind of, like chewing it in my mouth a little bit, and that's exactly what I'm getting. So yeah, it's good. That's a really good description. One of the other things to talk about with this is on the label. Mine says non-chill filtered, which is a really big deal. A lot of times, bourbon makers will heat their juice, or I'm sorry, they won't heat it. They'll lower it to a certain temperature. It'll cause a lot of the fat and stuff in it to congeal, and then they just filter it out. According to the producer, that shouldn't affect the flavor, but a lot of people can't stand non-chill filtered. Wild Turkey does chill filtering on almost everything but some of their higher end stuff and both the rare breeds. So this is a big deal for it not to be non-chill filtered. Just for what it's worth. I saw that on the label and it made me think about it, but this is good.
Yeah.
This is good.
That's very good. So
I also just, again, because I'm, have a touch of attention deficit issues, 112.2 proof. Like, can you imagine being the guy being like, we're 1/10 of a point off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just chasing that rabbit all day. I wonder if Wild Turkey's being honest with us about that.
Yeah,
certainly
very specific.
Certainly they would never lie to us, right?
Well, you just
consumer,
but it's it's barrel proof. It's not single barrel, right? So they could always mix and match to get there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they're probably it says barrel proof though, but yeah. So,
imagine if you had a batch of 8 barrels, and then you just proof them down to this. Or are they just cheap and maybe they just don't want to print a new label?
Yeah.
Because money is, they're in the money making business, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's an interesting proof. It's good though.
So what is your score on this?
I think I'm going to throw this. Well, what'd you pay for it?
No, this is the overall score. So price isn't coming to.
Okay. Yeah. We'll come to that. Yeah, that's right. For me, I'm gonna throw this at 75.
75.
Yeah, 75.
Right.
I think this is pretty good. I like it. Again, I'm a tad biased because I do like barrel proof rye. It is 30-something degrees outside where I'm at, so this is just warming my spirit and my soul right now.
Oh,
this is good.
Colder than we are.
Yeah.
So I'm a little lower than you are. I came in at 68.
Okay.
And my biggest drawback is that, again, it's that short finish, right? I really like whiskeys that linger. And so I love it up front. I love the nose. I love the palate. And what's there on the finish I like, but I wanted to hang out, right?
Yeah.
And so I dropped it a little bit for that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I get that.
So now
it's kind of where you want to be. Like if you're a big finish guy, I'm a palate guy, so I want it to hit the front of my tongue, the middle part of my tongue, and the back part of my tongue. And I want it to just I want to enjoy the ride, the trip. So that's kind of what I enjoy, to where I can understand people liking really long finishes, but yeah.
See, if it's got a long finish, I drink it slower. Because I'm enjoying that long finish, right?
Yeah, whatever you got to do to convince yourself, Aaron.
Yeah. So now the question is, so we're back to is this a cheap enough bottle to get a value score?
I paid. Well, here's where it gets. Do you want me to tell you what I paid for it, or do you want me to tell you what it's supposed to be?
No, what you can readily find it at.
Okay, well, readily is not. It's not allocated. This is an everyday. This is something Wild Turkey makes every day. It's a core. It's a product in their core lineup. It's not seasonal. It's not a one-off. Like, this is here all the time. With that being said, it is not here all the time in Central Georgia. It is very hard to find. This bottle is actually a couple of years old. I bought it maybe a year and a half ago. There's a store now south of me who gets this and carries it for $65. I paid $90 for it.
Mm.
Yeah, because I had a touch of FOMO. Just a touch. I didn't go, I didn't lose my mind completely, but I did have a little Christmas money in my pocket. I'm not going to lie to you. And I was like, you know what? I think this might be worth it. Spoiler alert. It's not $90 whiskey.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
In Tennessee, it's $58.99.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
It comes in
well,
right
if we're going to go
at,
yeah.
So if we average, we're not, I mean, even what you can normally find it at and what I can find it, we're not under that value score, right? We're not,
yeah.
So that $60 is our cutoff. We're not averaging that.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'll throw out a score for it, but I'll just change this to the question. We'll just put it this way. Do you think it's worth what you said you can find it for $68 now at the store? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Do you think it's worth that?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. But it ain't worth much more than that. Again, we're talking about secondary and, what MSRP should be and what these stores mark it up for. Obviously, that's something that if you're into bourbon, you're into whiskey, you're going to fight that every day, no matter what store you walk into, unless you walk into a store who's kind of got some stuff in place to combat that. With that being said, I paid, like I said, I paid $90 for it. I wouldn't pay $90 for it again. I'm not sure I would pay $68 for it. I feel comfortable paying for this at, what'd you say, $58?
$58.99. It's $59.
$58. I feel good with that because rare breed bourbon is 60, supposed to be in the 60s. And I understand that rye is more expensive. It's a little more labor intensive when it comes to cleaning all your equipment. So I'm okay in the $65, $68 range. But if I have $68 in my pocket, I'm probably not going to run out and buy this. Might look for something else.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so that's, I think for, like what I paid for it, every now and then it's a nice change of pace,
Sure. Yeah.
But it's, yeah. And I know we're nitpicking here because it's like, $60 is really not, that used to be expensive bourbon 5-6 years ago,
Yeah, I know it.
So,
I know it.
But I think that, and you had texted me, I'm trying to, is that kind of what you meant when you're talking about like secondhand market stuff? What do you think the price should be on it type thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I think that it's at least where I can get it at. And I still haven't figured out whether or not Tennessee is one of those states where you can't do, like, there's a certain percentage of markup you're allowed to do and that's it. Because I don't know if we are or not. I need to figure that out. But I have seen that almost every store the price is the same. So
well, that's good. And like and every store does it different. Alabama has an ABC store,
yeah.
So it does, and they're all owned and controlled by the state. So it doesn't matter if I go visit you and you're in North Alabama and I live in South Alabama. The ABC stores are going to be the same, which is fantastic. But there's no give or take. I guess. There's benefits both ways, but yeah, Georgia is definitely not an ABC state. I saw a bottle of 17-year-old Eagle Rare the other day when I was in Macon, and the guy wanted $4,000 for it, and it's supposed to be like $300. So, yeah, it's silly, man. It's silly.
It can stay on the shelf for that price. So,
absolutely.
So our score average on this is a 71.
What did you give it again? 68?
Yeah.
68, that's right. Okay.
And so, and then I guess we're $60 to $65 is kind of where we think it should be priced.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we'll do going forward is we'll do the value score for stuff $60 and under, and we're going to average what you and I paid for it, right? Or what we can regularly find it at. And then
that's fair.
If it's above that, then we'll say, okay, where should it be priced? Is it? And we'll do that based on an average as well, then too, kind of thing. So that's that kind of closes out that. So tonight you wanted to talk about people who are smarter than us. Was that kind of the gist?
Which is going to be a lot of listeners.
So, yeah.
No, I wanted to, when we sat down to kind of kick this thing back off, you asked me to come up with some stuff that, that I felt like was, something that needed to be discussed and, kind of related to manhood. And I definitely think that this is something, and mentors is something I'd like to talk about just because, again, I'm a little biased because I have somebody, a couple people in my life that I can go to when I need some guidance. And I know not everybody has that. And so I'd like to that's what I'd like to talk about tonight. So, I guess really when you hear the word mentor, we'll just kind of step into it. What does that mean to you? What is that word? What do you think of?
So I immediately think of somebody who's wise, right? So who's got wisdom, and and they're there to impart that wisdom into my life. And so basically to be able to be successful at life without having to always learn it the hard way, So it's someone who's got wisdom, and they're there to impart it into me. Yeah,
I think that's a great definition. It's somebody who teaches, who gives advice, and kind of guides somebody along their walk. For me, I can kind of talk about some of my personal experience. There's two men who affected my walk greatly. One of them I met in college. He was actually the dean of students. His name was David. And at that time, I'd felt the Lord, calling me to go to seminary. And as the Lord would have it, I was sitting next to his wife at a dinner. And she was like, "Tell me about yourself, blah, blah, blah." And I was just so on fire for the Lord. I was just telling everybody, like, the Lord's put a calling on my life, and I'm going to seminary. And, and she was like, "Well, isn't that nice, honey?" And she kind of taps me on the leg. Well, little did I know she was a preacher's wife. And that was his wife, So our paths crossed several months later. And, my last semester at Andrew, I took all one-on-one studies with him. I took New Testament, Old Testament, Survey of World Religions. I mean, it was just really like I had to do some reading, and and I used, air quotes on that, but really it was just a blocked out session where he and I just sat down, and he just poured into me about some perspectives and some things that I just hadn't thought about as a Christian, and it just really kind of kick-started me in my pursuit of biblical knowledge and pursuit of the Lord. And it just, and when I say kick-started, it flung me for years, so that kind of is the initial impact for me. And then once we got here to Central Georgia, there was another man in our church, and his name is also David. And we were in a Bible study with him and his wife, his first wife, who's now passed, and another couple. And he and I just hit it off. And, and so now he pours into my life on the spiritual side. As far as, if I'm struggling with something, like he's who I go to. "Hey, I need you, I'm struggling with this. I need you to pray for me about this, and it's just been awesome. We see each other a couple times a year. And, of course he loves on us and loves my kids, and he's a very type A personality. And so is my wife. And so they hit it off, like he's a doer, she's a checklist person. So you put them together, and it's like our days are going to be planned. We know what we're going to eat, so it's a good thing. But to get back to the mentor side of things, it's just an invaluable relationship in my life that is just like, I don't know where I would be without it. And I don't, and I say that like it's up there right behind like my relationship with the Lord, because he has poured into me and had such an effect on my life. So, that's what I think of when I think of, mentors. Do you have anybody like that?
Yeah,
Or
I'd go with one with my dad. I mean, I was blessed with a really, godly man as a father, a good father, and who was and is, actively involved in my childhood through college, marriage, with I can always go to for advice, or he just listen to me gripe, whatever. So that'd be one. I think another one, and it's kind of funny because like the second one, his name is Brian Harkerode, and I actually worked for him. We went to church together, but I also worked for him in Nebraska for about 7 years when I was an ag mechanic. And like, I never asked him like, hey, will you be my mentor? Right. It's just kind of like, but there's so much that I learned about being a Christian in business from him just by watching him. And I could ask him, like, hey, why did you do that? Like, that makes no financial sense. And he'd be like, well, there's some things we do just because it's the right thing to do, or because we need to have compassion, or, whatever. But then also just in leadership and that kind of, like, so there's stuff that he like that I try to emulate, that Brian has sadly passed, but just to this day, like, that I try to emulate, that I learned from him. And so it was like a mentorship but it wasn't like a formal thing. You know what I mean? It was just
oh yeah.
Like he'd come over and sit on the porch and we'd just sit and talk, and stuff. And there's a lot I learned from him. So those are the two of the examples that I guess I'd have, that just come to mind.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think when you talk about the kind of scheduled time, hey, we're going to meet every Tuesday at 8 a.m., to me, that seems more like what John Wesley would call a band, where there's a group of small people who meet, who hold each other accountable.
Like midgets?
And that kind of,
small, you said small people.
Yeah, like a small group of people. Did I leave the word group out?
Yeah, you just said small people.
Well, and if they're small, that's okay.
Indeed.
That sounds more like the accountability side to me than a mentor. And I do think there's a distinction between the two. I think there's a place for both. And I think they could kind of intermingle. But I do think they're two different things when it comes to, an accountability, a band, something like that, versus, somebody who's just a mentor who's trying to teach you, just like you said, teach you how to do this life with wisdom and honoring the Lord and the biblical ways. So yeah, I definitely think that. When I was doing some research to get ready for this, I'd kind of, obviously, as you probably hope I would, I went to the Bible to try and find some examples, and I never really truly understood how much the mentorship model is just shown throughout the Bible.
Yep.
Yeah, and I wrote down a couple examples that I sent to you, but Jethro and Moses, Elijah and Elisha, Eli and Samuel, Ruth and Naomi, Samuel, Saul and David, Daniel and King Nebuchadnezzar, Elizabeth and Mary, and then of course Jesus and his disciples. I mean, there's.
And the one I thought of right away was Barnabas to Paul.
Yeah,
and then Paul to Timothy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Talking about Paul and Timothy in a relationship where Paul trusts him so much that some of those letters say greetings from Paul and Timothy, like, can you imagine how tight their relationship was when Paul was locked up in Rome? I mean, Timothy was his stand-in, like it's just, it's a pretty cool example of that, of the mentorship, no doubt. And I don't think it always has to be age, but I think a lot of times it is, like my friend David, both of them, if you look at both of them, they're 20, 30 years older than I am. They're significantly older than me, but when our relationship started, they were still older than me. I just happened to be 25, so I do think there's something to be modeled there in that regard.
I'm trying to think, was Barnabas that much older than Paul?
I don't know about that.
And was Jesus that much older than his disciples? But that that one's kind of hard to do because Jesus is just God. So
yeah, technically he is.
Yeah, so
technically he is older than all of them.
That's right.
He gets a pass.
But I know what you mean. I think that just it's naturally easier to one, with age comes wisdom. Like that's kind of biblical, and so
yeah.
And then, so there's going to be the option, the ability to teach, to decide, mentor better there. I do think that as you get older in life, like you get into your old ages, like we're starting to get into, the possibility of you meeting someone who is your age or maybe, close to it, who's a young Christian, increases as opposed to when you're 18, And so I think that, the ability to mentor someone closer to your age might increase a little bit as you get older, or did it make more sense or naturally happen, I should say. Not that you get to like, oh, it's a fit. Like I meet the checkpoints.
Almost like a Greek, like rush, like they're rushing.
That's right.
For like big sister or big brother and little brother or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I do think that the age and the wisdom part, I mean, that definitely
happens.
Like that just it happens, and it makes sense to me because if it was somebody closer to my age, while yes, we can talk about business and we can talk about, stocks or whatever, because, let's say we're in the 10-year bracket where we're at least, in that bracket of being at least 10 years apart from each other or less. To me, that feels more on the accountability side where, I would look at you or look at whoever and go, how is it with your soul, brother? Like, tell me what troubles you. Is there anything you need to confess? As opposed to, and again, not saying that can't happen with a mentor, but it just feels more on the accountability side.
Yeah. I think a mentor would be almost more like, hey, what's going on, as opposed to, I see you walking this. You don't want to do that. Like, this is not going to go well for A, B, and C. Or, like these are the directions I would go in this because of A, B, and C. It's that biblical principle with worldly experience, which is wisdom. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that. And so in your life and maybe in some of the other relationships that you've seen, like what is the role of a mentor? What do you feel like the role of that person should be?
I guess it's just literally it's almost like your personal pastor to a point.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I like that. Yeah.
And not that in order to be a mentor you have to have the same calling in your life to be over a flock, but we are all called to go and make disciples, and so we are all called to have one person that we're helping instruct and guide, both in their biblical and their, when I say biblical, I don't mean like reading the Bible, but like their spiritual journey and their sanctification process and all that kind of stuff, and being there, but also to offer again, just life wisdom and stuff. And so it's a person who's like, he's there, he knows me, he's paying attention. We might not talk every day, but he knows what's going on in my life. He's paying attention. He's willing to rebuke things in my life when they need to be rebuked, and he encourages things that need to be encouraged.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I think, it's somebody who's been there, and I mean that both spiritually and, I guess worldly, whether they've worked the jobs, they've changed jobs, they've moved, they've done all those things. I mean, they've really just kind of been there. And by I say being there, that gives them the experience and the wisdom and knowledge to really pour into your life, right? Or really for you to pour in. I mean, you're getting up there, Aaron. It's time for you to pour into somebody else's life. I say that we're the same age, aren't we? We're a couple years apart.
I think I'm older than you are.
Yeah, I'm 40.
Oh, we're the same age then. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You just look terrible. No, I'm just kidding.
Dude, I've been farming my whole life. You've been sitting in a squad car doing nothing.
Yeah, doing nothing. That's right. As you sit in a tractor that drives itself.
Hey, semantics.
Hey, listen, when the police cars start driving themselves, then we can talk.
That's
but
right.
Until then, right. Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess that was, and I want to touch on that later, but I kind of want to keep going on this. Like, what does a mentor look like? And I think, again, the wise counsel part is really where I just feel like the Lord just keeps leading me, because, when I talk about David, like it just, when we got ready to leave the church, he was one of the first phone calls outside of Ashley that I made, and was like, hey, this is where I'm at. And, and he kind of helped me navigate through that. And he prayed for me for weeks about that. And he called me one day and was like, I think the Lord's telling me you need to go too, like that. And that just, when we first talked to that first episode, talking about calling, like, he and I were on the phone a lot during that time period, because anytime he felt like the Spirit would like move him, or he would call me, or he'd send me a text, so that's really, when I think of a mentor, like, to me, that is, quality number one, and I kind of laugh because it's not a draft, like, it's not like you can be like, oh, you've owned this many businesses, I choose you. Like, it's not that at all. But I think that's how if you have that relationship in your life and somebody's either coming to you or you're going to somebody and there's providing that wise counsel, that person is definitely a mentor in your life. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think too that there's multiple types of mentors a little bit, like there's the mentors that like you've had that are long term, like you said, they're just massive important relationships that happen. And that's, I think, especially when we start looking at like biblical mentors and how we do that, we need to find that. We need to have that, we need to be that. But I do also think that there's other times where we have mentors that come in for a season, and God's put them in our lives for that season to get us through that season, and so I guess an example for me would be, and it's kind of funny. So the pastor that married Liz and I, Steve Wood, he was the pastor of the River in Kathleen for when it was there. But so he was a youth pastor, and he wasn't even my youth pastor, but I knew a lot of friends that went to him. And then when I got out of college, I actually went and taught Sunday school underneath him as a youth pastor. And then when I came back from overseas, we got married, and I liked him. So, hey, you do our ceremony. And then I didn't see him for like 9 years, talked to him, nothing. Then we moved back to Georgia, and that's annoying. So sorry for the loud noise in the background. Something's freaking out. But
no, you're good.
But and then like we kind of rekindled while I lived there. He was our pastor and stuff and stuff. And then I moved away. And now that I moved here, he's since retired from being a pastor. But we just met up, and he was riding motorcycle up in the mountains. He found out I lived here. Hey, let's go ride for a day. We went, him and his son, rode motorcycles, but just had conversations that I needed to hear at the time, guidance for the time, and it's cool because it seems like God has brought him in and out of my life at certain times where he had just the things I needed to hear. You know? And so,
yeah, I think that's powerful. And I look back and I think about like our time in ministry, and I think about the boys that came through our ministry. And some of them I talk to, some of them I don't. There's two that I'm particularly close with. One of them lives here in town. The other one's actually serving in our Army, and I think he's in Germany, but he's coming to Arizona. But anyways, I definitely think that while I don't talk to him every day, the guy that's in the Army, our paths do cross, and I do feel like I come in and out of his life kind of like Steve did for you. So I can definitely relate to that. And I do think that there are some people that are just seasonal, but they're there because the Lord knows that you need them there at that moment. So I agree. I agree 100%. Absolutely. And I think that, did Steve like kind of Like, was he just speaking into your life, or did he like get in your business?
No, he got my business a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, because that my friend that's in the Army, like that's what I would do. Like he would hit me up on Instagram, we would be in DMs, and it'd be like, "Hey, Mr. Daniel, how's it going?" Blah blah blah. And then about 2 sentences in, I'd be like, "Where you at? Where you going to church?" Like I would just dig in, and he'd be like, "Geez." Is that what Steve did for you?
Yeah, I mean, more like he was. So that's when I just had moved here, to Tennessee. Okay. Within a short term of that, and it was the why did you move here and all the stuff that we've had, and I'm not quite ready to air all that out yet, publicly. But
yeah.
We went through all that, and then he was like, okay, so how's your attitude towards those people now? Like how's this?
Yeah.
Like have you moved? Like is there forgiveness? Are you bitter? Like what are you doing?
Yeah.
And so yeah, what's the guy's name? It's not Laban. It's Laban, right? So he's like, are you forgiving your Laban as who would have been Jacob did his, right? So,
yeah.
And I was like, okay, yeah, I got you, Steve. I see what you're doing.
Yeah, those questions get pointed, and it just gets uncomfortable, doesn't it? Oh yeah, yeah. So, I've definitely been there. I had David call me out. This has been several years ago. He lives on the coast now, but he used to live here in Perry. And I had him call me out, and boy, I felt like a dog with my tail tucked between my legs. It didn't help that, he's my father's age, and so it felt like my dad was getting on to me a little bit, But I just was like, just mopey, and I was like, yes, and it just sucks, man. Like, but that's I think that was modeled well, that sure we can talk pleasantries and you can tell me about your girlfriend or whatever, but in my friend's example and just the example you gave with Steve, like I think that there comes a time where you've got to ask those pointed questions, and they got to get in your business.
Yeah,
you gotta get in your business, no doubt.
But at the same time, though, like the relationship's there, where like it's okay for them to get in your business. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so that's
absolutely
like you can't. And I think that's one thing too is like I've been part of like structured mentor programs in churches.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there are times where the structured approach leads to a true mentorship relationship, but it's almost like, okay, we jumped into it. Here's this book. We're going to go through it. I'm like, dude, I don't know you.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you're old.
Yeah.
I get you're old, but I don't know you. I'm not going to like answer these things to you, and sorry, I'm chasing a rabbit here, but so much of Christianity in our walk and in whether it's witnessing, evangelism, mentorship, being mentored, accountability, whatever that is, you've got to have true fellowship and relationship first for any of this stuff to work. And that's why the Bible says, do not forsake the gathering, and it's not because you need to be in a big room full of a lot of people singing the same song. It's because all this stuff flows out of that fellowship. Sorry, that's my tangent.
No, I don't think I don't think you've hijacked it or you've gone down a rabbit trail at all. Cause I agree. What it does is it models, again, we're going to go, I can tie this back perfectly, is that it models the relationship that Jesus has with his disciples, right? But sign me up, coach. Because it models the relationship that we have with Jesus, is that it's a relationship. It is relational. That was something that we would always have to jump up and down about when we were in ministry. We would step in front of some of these executive committees and leadership teams, and they'd want to know, like, what are you doing? And we'd tell them, like, part of it is just showing up every week and building that relationship, and that's exactly what it is. It's having the relationship so that, again, when David looks at me and puts his hand on my shoulder and says, you're not well, and I can tell, like, what's going on, right? Like, he's got capital with me to where he can say that to me, to where if somebody I didn't know, like you said, we've been reading a book for 2 weeks, puts his hand on my shoulder and says that, I'm going to say, yeah, bro, I'm good. Like, I think you might just, I appreciate your concern, and I'm just going to brush you right off.
I had a bad burrito earlier.
We don't know each other.
So yeah, I get, yeah, no, that's it. And it's sad because when relationships God wants us to have work correctly, like in His order. They're like the most beautiful parts of life. But we try to compartmentalize and fake so much stuff, in the modern church that we just, if we get anything, we get like a cheap discounted version of it. We get the Kmart version of it, right? But
a great value.
Yeah, but it's because I struggle with it too. Where a compartmentalizing is like, okay, this is my church life, this is my life, and not that I compartmentalize my walk, but it's like, okay, when I go to church, I got these people I want to talk to, blah blah blah. But during the week, I'm like, no, I just hang out with my work, like people at work. That's who I see all week, as opposed to my church family, this gathering that I go to, they should be involved in my life, Yeah. And I'm going to quote Pastor Steve again. But he always said you should be kitchen close, right?
Okay.
With your church friends. So, and kitchen close means that if I come to your house and I want to make a sandwich, I just get up and I go to your kitchen and I make a sandwich. I don't ask permission. I don't feel bad if I leave my like the knife with mayonnaise on it on your counter. I ain't worried about you not being my friend anymore. Like it's just. Like kitchen close. And he said, that's where we should be, because the only people that you are comfortable with that are family, and that we're supposed to be, as a church, we're supposed to be family, so, and if you have that, then it's not, to me, like, I don't know, it's just when I had true mentorship, it wasn't annoying for him to pry into my life. I didn't take correction adversarially, like it's just like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. And I mean, there's sometimes I've had mentors say stuff to me that like 95% of the time I'm like, dude, what you're saying, I'm tracking with, like, you're right. Like I messed up. And there's other times I've been like, because they're still flawed humans. Right. And so I'm like, I ain't going to do that. And sometimes I kick myself in the butt for not listening. And sometimes I'm like, I'm glad I didn't. But, it's this, the relationship has to come, and then the mentorship flourishes through it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It has to be relational, and I think the word for me that kind of comes is like organic. When Ashley took over this new job at her school a couple years ago, she's like, you got to get to know this person, you got to get to know this person, you got to do this, you got to do that, and I was like, babe, like we're guys, like it's gonna happen. Or not. Very naturally. Yeah, like it's going to happen while we're watching football, or we're drinking whiskey and smoking cigars, or we're on the golf course, or we're doing a family thing, and like all of their kids and our kids are together. Like it's going to happen very naturally. Like that's how relationships form, So yeah, I couldn't agree more on that. It just has to be like organic, It just has to be. I can't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. And I guess really because you've had this in your life and I've had it in my life, like how do you pay it forward? How are you like, where are you at on being somebody's mentor?
Yeah. So I guess, here, not very much, right? I mean,
well, yeah. So you're new.
Yeah. But like previously where we used to live, I try to make it a point to be involved and teaching some way, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, I did small group with some high school kids, some high school junior boys, and then when they became seniors, they were high school senior boys that we did small group with. So that, like that kind of stuff, and then just building a relationship with younger guys, and sometimes it turned into a mentorship deal, where they'd come in and ask, and sometimes they just thought I was just the goofy 38-year-old that, like to talk about guns and ride motorcycles. So, and so, but trying to do that. And it's that to me, it's the idea of that we should always have a Barnabas. We should always have a Timothy, assuming that we assume we're Paul, which is probably kind of not the most humble places to put yourself. But that. And I think that's what's important too, is like to never stop being mentored, right? There's always somebody that can speak into your life, but then to provide it for somebody else. And I think it's when you're in your, like, I remember like in my 20s, I was like, okay, I started working. That's when I started working with high school guys, right? I started teaching youth group and stuff. And I was like, man, I know it all like this. And if I fouled up, I was really hard on myself and stuff. But then as I got older, I started realizing, man, the guys that mentor me, like they screw up a lot. But I still want them to speak into my life. Like and so it's the same way going down, And so I think I think it's another part of the wisdom thing, that as we get older, it becomes easier for us to take on the mentor role instead of just being the mentee, because we realize, like, man, people just want to know someone cares about them, and obviously, like, if you're a buffoon that has no wisdom, you should not be mentoring anybody. But if you've been walking with the Lord, you have wisdom, because I mean, like, especially if you pray for it. I mean, God says if you ask for His wisdom, He'll give it to you. And sometimes, like, some people learn wisdom out of just, like, getting to know God better and being like, oh, I'm going to apply God's principles to these parts of my life. It's people like me learn wisdom by knowing what we should do, but then being selfish, and then God hits us with the 2x4 and fixes the problem in ourselves. And then, I learned the hard way, but I still have the wisdom of the lesson, right? And so you can pass that along. And so I think that's the hardest thing. And now that we're here, I got multiple avenues, I guess, I'm kind of looking at. I mean, one is I'm trying to get involved in church to get to know some guys, and that, but it's just time. Again, you got to build that relationship. But then I also have to understand that there's other inorganic relationships that I'm in. Like, I've got young guys that work for me that I interact with daily. And so, not that, because I don't know where they are spiritually and that kind of stuff yet, it's not a spiritual mentorship, but it makes me think back to Brian I was talking about. And Brian was a godly man. I learned a lot of spiritual mentorship through him too. But the initial mentorship I got from him was just work ethic approach, business, that kind of stuff. And so, starting there and kind of being like, okay, am I being a boss that they would want to model themselves after when they became in leadership? And so I kind of start thinking about those kind of things too.
Well, and I think part of that too is, especially when you don't know where someone is on their walk, is just being decidedly different, to where they look at you and go, hey, Aaron's a great guy, but there's just something different about him. I think that, that's how relationships start. Yeah, absolutely. For me, I'm going to be just real honest with you. I struggle with imposter syndrome, and just sometimes, if you don't know what that is, or I can explain it to our sole listener, but that's when you think you're going to be found out, that you're not as good as really everybody thinks you are, that you're an imposter, right? I struggle with that, and I feel like the devil's kind of attacking me in this regard, is that while I don't have the life experience of the two Davids that are in my life, but I do have some. I mean, I've been on this planet for 40 years, and I've got my share of screw ups, and I could certainly help someone 20 years younger than me, but every time I think about it and I pray about it, I just think, like, who are you? Who are you to think that you could help somebody? I mean, it's a real struggle for me. And the verse that I keep coming back to that kind of pulls me out of that mindset is 1 Timothy 4:12. Let no one despise you for your youth, but set believers an example in speech, conduct, in love, in faith, in purity. So that's really where I really try to anchor myself in thinking that, like, I'm not perfect, but I can offer something to somebody, right? So for me, I don't have anybody that I would, say that I'm actively mentoring. I do have two guys that kind of call me every now and again from my youth group, and we talk, but outside of that, there's really not anybody. And I feel like, because this relationship I have with my friend David has been so fruitful, like, my prayer right now is for the Lord to, like, send somebody to me that I can help the way He's helped me. And I'll be upfront with you. I've been praying that prayer for a couple of years now. So obviously the Lord's timing is going to be good, but I just want to give back what was given to me. It's just, I just wouldn't be who I am if I don't have these relationships. There's another friend of mine named James who's older than I am, and I call him about stuff kind of work related. He and I were in an accountability group together with another pastor several years ago. But, outside of my faith, the things he's poured into my life, I wouldn't be who I am professionally without it, right? And so I do have guys who call me in public safety and go, "Hey, D-Watt, what do you think about this, man? Like, run this by me, tell me where you're at, give me your thoughts. Like, I want to know what you think," right? So on the professional side, I definitely have that, and I love when they call me. That's one of the things I loved about being a road supervisor, was helping new deputies figure it out, and so I'm really drawn, when you step back across the line into the faith side of things, like I'm really drawn to that. I want to be able to help somebody, and who knows, maybe this is it. Not that like you're my mentor or we're each other's, but just the fact that you and I can sit down and talk and kind of flesh these ideas out. I don't know. Like I said, I'm still praying about it. I've been praying about it for a couple of years, but I do just think it's so important to be able to just pass that along to somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that too, I don't know, just look at, like you talked about the imposter syndrome. Part of that's that relationship though, right? Too. Like that gets rid of that to me. Like it gets rid of the fear of being found out, because the one thing, and it is a little different, I guess, a little bit because our mentor's probably going to know more about us than we know about them as far as the crap, right? But in order to me to be effective, is a mentor always says, "But I'm crap too," right? Like without Christ, I'm toast. Like I'm done. Like I don't stand a chance. And so when stuff does find out, and then you just got to own it. Like yeah, you're right. I did do that because you know why? I told you on the first day, I'm crap too. Yep. And so and then like I said, I think it is hard, and I think each generation is so different, and I don't mean that to be like, oh, we're the better generation, because no, like we're all crap. We're all crap. We started from crap, and without Christ, we're crap. But it is hard to, like, because words change so much and meanings and it's funny to me is like I start looking at like I don't know, like our generation. I don't know if you remember youth group, like when you were in youth group, not you leading it, but when you were in it, like programs, man, like, hey, we're doing this event, it's going to be awesome. And like that brought people in, and it doesn't really work anymore. Right. Like when I left youth ministry, like it didn't, like programs didn't work. Like we'd have these cool big games, glow in the dark dodgeball and bubble ball or whatever. And yeah, some people showed up, but it wasn't like these, it used to be huge gatherings. And then I found out it's like, these kids want face-to-face relationships because everything's digital. They don't get it. Yeah. But they don't know how to cultivate a face-to-face relationship. And so it's like it's this really weird thing, and it's like, so, I find it like, so, and honestly, it's one of those things too, like I had a kind of a polling, like, okay, I'm not really, I felt like I was getting disconnected from the youth. Like I didn't really, wasn't into the same things they were anymore. I couldn't relate to them, and I had like, it seemed like the kids that were now the guys that I was a little close to that were in college, like that age was still like, I don't know, just got along better. I felt so I kind of started shifting my ministry away from youth to more young men, right?
Right.
Call it laziness because I didn't want to learn new people, I guess. But but I think that like this, there is a yearning by younger people to have a mentor, but they're terrible at interpersonal skills. Like they haven't learned social skills on a one-on-one, and to be vulnerable face to face, as opposed to just, like I'll put out my darkest thoughts and secrets online, but I'm gonna, where no one can talk back to me, nobody can see me. But to have that accountability face to face is something they've never had to encounter, and so it's becoming harder to find someone who will accept that. But not that means, hey, I tried, man, I'm out. Like, we don't have that excuse, Like we're called to go and make disciples, and really when you break it down to it, you ask me, what do I think a mentor is? And I said, like it's kind of like your own personal pastor. It's really more, it's your discipler, right? I mean, we're disciples of Christ, so I don't want to, whatever. But it is someone who's emulating Christ back to us again on a earthly level, for lack of a better word. And so we are called to go do that. But I think that we have to be, God's going to bring people into our lives, but we also have to be actively seeking it, And again,
Yeah.
I don't have someone like today. I'm like, oh yeah, Jimbo over there. He's my mentee, you know. But it is something that and it takes time, right? It takes time and effort. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I get older and I don't have any more time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for some reason I have less effort because I have less energy, right? So
Yeah.
but,
and that's the thing is like relationships can be messy.
Yeah.
You know, and so you think you pour, I mean, I could see a situation where you pour all this time and energy into building a relationship with this guy, and then, you know, something happens and the relationship just sours, you know. I mean, it's not easy. Like we're sitting here talking about how nice and pretty and easy it is, but it's not, you know. I've been in several Bible studies where it's like, hey, we're going to start this band. We're going to be a small group of people, right? Like we're going to do this. And then like one of them, the pastor got moved. He was only there a year because we were in the United Methodist Church at the time, and he got moved. He was only there a year. So we did all this cultivating of these relationships. And then like, I mean, he and I, we don't talk. I mean, he's in Camilla, you know, like they're far away now. And so it's not always easy, but I think, you know, if the Lord puts a calling on your heart about it, obviously, you know, you need to listen to that, but just know that it's not going to be easy.
No. And it's, like when I moved here, I mean, obviously, so I had the greatest group of people I've ever had around me when I lived in the Seward, in the Seward area. I mean, like I've never been in a church that had like functioning small groups to that level, right? Where every small group, and I had guys that, you know, we'd hang out and do podcasts, right? You know, and stuff. And we were brothers and stuff. And I still love those guys, but it's just, I mean, guys are lazy. If you don't live next to each other, like your friendships dwindle, you know. And I told Liz, I said, that's why DWAT's the perfect answer for this podcast thing, because our friendship's never been local, right? It's always been distant. So
I don't know if you knew this or not, just a sidebar. The first time you and I met, we went and had in person, you know, we went and had lunch. It was me, you, and Nate.
Yeah, with the Black Barley, whatever it's called, or
Black Barley, that's right. And my girls were actively picking on me. They were like, "Ooh, you're going to meet your friend." Like they're actively picking on me. Are you nervous? I was like, "No, I've known the guy since like 2012. No, I'm not nervous. What are you talking about?"
Yeah, like you weren't even born yet.
So just a sidebar.
No, it's funny because
they bullied me about that.
My wife did. She's like, "What are you guys going to talk about?" I'm like, "The same thing we always talk about," you know.
Yeah.
So yeah. But
yeah,
it was funny.
All right, man. Well, any closing thoughts for you as far as, you know, this mentor thing?
No, I think it's I guess my only final thought is I think that the actual term mentor scares a lot of people. You know, like, I don't want to have a mentor or doing some program. And it's because it's a word that has been co-opted, because there's a lot of churches that have like, oh, we have these mentor programs and we're going to, okay, and you're assigned to Bill and you're assigned to Steve, you know. But when you actually just sit and think about people, what a mentor is, what the definition of it was, someone who's wiser, older, whatever, more experienced, speaking into your life and helping you with direction and stuff like that. Most people can be like, oh yeah, I had one of those.
Mm-hmm.
That was great. You know, and so it doesn't matter if you're 16 or 60, there's still somebody out there that can speak into your life. And there's probably someone, maybe not if you're 16, well, you still have little brother stuff, but you know, there's someone too that you can speak into their life. And so it's important to always have a Barnabas and always have a Timothy. And we need to be there, because when we're being discipled, obviously we're growing, but also when you're discipling somebody else, it's not just for their benefit either. Like when you're speaking into somebody else's life, there's something that spiritually that happens in you too, and motivates you to, because there's times like I've had kids I'm talking to and they'll be like, you know, they're struggling with something, and I feel like, man, I need to I know why they shouldn't be doing this, or like I need to help kind of advise them on this, but I really don't know biblically why I believe this. I need to back this up, you know, and it forces me to get into it. And so I think it's beneficial on both ends to be a mentor and to be the mentee.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I think that, at least in my experience, I wasn't looking for anybody, and the Lord just knew what I needed at the time I needed it, And so I definitely think that, like we said earlier, they've all been very organic. I wasn't like knocking on people's door going, "Hey, I need a mentor. I need you to pour into my life and invest all your time in me." Like, it was never that. It was just very organic. They were all relational. And I guess that's really what I'm trying to do is just, give back to the, what's been given to me, because I wouldn't be who I am today without it. So they're not going to be easy. But what in life is other than maybe the connect the dots on the Sunday kids bulletin, right?
Yeah. And honestly, being a mentor fulfills the Great Commission just as much as being a missionary or an evangelist or, anything like that. Because what is the Great Commission?
Mm-hmm.
It's to go out and make disciples, right?
Yep.
Not converts. So
yep.
Just because somebody else may be the one who led them to Christ, right? Or through which God revealed himself, however you want to look at it. But disciples is a lifelong journey of learning and to be how somebody else is, but also to be spiritually reproductive themselves, to then go out. And so I think that we have a bad tendency to think, oh, they accepted Christ, their journey's done. No, man, the journey's just starting. And people, just as somebody who had to be there to share the gospel, somebody's got to be there to help them grow in that faith journey. And so don't, if you feel like don't, maybe God's role for you is, not we're supposed to have body counts like, oh yeah, I saved 5. I got 5 people that said their, sinner's prayer to me. But but that God has, that his role for you might to be a mentor. And that's just as important as, oh, sorry, I'm going to keep going. But so like Barnabas didn't write half of the New Testament. Paul did.
Yep.
But without a Barnabas, there wouldn't have been a Paul.
Yep.
Right. I mean, obviously Christ spoke into Paul in the conversion happened, but Barnabas was brought there to mentor him into, fulfill, like a better understanding of who Christ is and how this all works, and bringing, the Jewish prophecy and Jewish law into a resolute answer that he could then take to the Gentiles. But so don't, mentorship is a very, very important thing to have and to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you could hit that example 100 times and it still wouldn't be touched on enough. I mean, it's just a great example of, somebody pouring into your life and then turn around and you pouring into somebody else's life, and look at the legacy that was left from Barnabas to Paul to Timothy. So, I agree, man. I agree. So,
all right, man.
Well, good, man.
You want to close?
That's all I got, man. Yeah, absolutely. Father, again, thank you for our time tonight. And we just pray for our listeners. Father, we pray for those who are mentors. We just pray that you would give them just some special wisdom, special just instincts when it comes to pouring into other people's lives, pouring into the people that you've placed into their lives, Father. And those that are that are a mentee, Father, we just pray that they would be able to have an open heart and an open mind and hear the things that are being poured into their lives from their mentor through you, Father. And just pray that these relationships would continue to grow, Father, that those who are looking for a mentor or looking to be mentored, Father, we pray that you would just make those connections. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right. We'll catch you guys next time on the Manhood Neat podcast. My rye's better than yours because it's $30 cheaper for the same thing.
I'm mad about it, bro.
You should be.
I'm mad about it.